Take a moment right here, feeling like it's out gear. Driving towards the sun with a rose and a gun. Feel the wind in my hair, going nowhere I swear. Like an outlaw on the run, dangerous but it's so fun. Running, running, no. Hold on, don't let go. Running, running, no. Keep running.
Hello everybody and welcome back to LPL English, where we are here at the end of the play-in stage. Our last day before that playoff bracket is officially set up and we get ourselves started with the postseason of 2025 split number 2. But we have one more team to lock their spot in. Will it be Weibo Gaming or ThunderTalk? We'll find out after the conclusion of this best of 5. My name is Grapes, joined alongside Bloxer here for this best of 5. And man, Bloxer, what a wonderful way to wrap up this play-in stage with, I think, one of our closer series that we have on paper.
Absolutely. I mean, these play-ins have been incredibly exciting. One singular best of 5 to decide if you make it into the playoffs or if your split is going to be done here, if you're in Group Nirvana next time around. So much is riding on the back of one series for these guys, and like I said, this one should be particularly interesting. We had a couple stomps, but we had some really close ones as well. FPX, NIP, that one was super back and forth right there, and this one should be just as similar.
Now, if you are kind of wondering, what are the play-ins? What is the playoffs? Are we not in playoffs already? Well, we do have a format and explainer just to get you guys all in the loop. 4 teams have already locked themselves a spot in the playoffs, at least after the group stage, that being Anyone's Legends, BLG, JDG, and Top Esports. And the other bottom 6 teams in Group Ascend, plus the top 2 teams in Group Nirvana made their way here. We now have just 2 more teams left to decide their fate. And we could jump straight into the standings or just how the bracket has actually ended up looking up so far, and this is how it ended up going. And you can see here that ThunderTalk at 4-14 do have our worst game score and match score in Group Ascend, but you know, Weibo have looked a little bit shaky as of late as well.
Yeah, Weibo had a decent time for themselves during the early stages of this Group Ascend, and then things got a little bit rough as we got a little bit further on into this one. I mean, we can see it here, right? Yeah, they won themselves a couple more games than ThunderTalk, but in the very end, it was actually ThunderTalk that was able to pick themselves up that final matchup, that final best of 3 versus them. These 2 teams, they're pretty similar overall in the ways that they want to play the game, in the ways that their splits have gone so far, and the fact that it's all come down to this one singular best of 3, best of 5 finally, to be able to see who moves on, just so exciting.
And again, we are in our play-in stage right now, and on our last day, let's go back and just take a brief recap of what has happened over these past couple of days. We saw IG starting off with a 3-0 win over EDG. Then we saw FPX play a 5-game banger against Ninjas Pajamas. LGD being able to take 1 game off of WE, but at the end of the day, it's been all of our seeding favorites winning out and making their way into the postseason. However, Bloxer, we still think that this is an opportunity for an upset if ThunderTalk do play at the top of their game.
Exactly. This is one of those matchups where both of these teams have had really interesting times of it so far in their attempts to get here. Where for Weibo, it's been up and down, very back and forth. For ThunderTalk, though, the best bit of them got stolen right? Beartron was looking brilliant, and he was looking a little bit too hot for ThunderTalk. Gets taken away. They have a new jungler come in, and it just hasn't really changed too much for them. The fortunes of ThunderTalk haven't really gotten worse, haven't really gotten better, but it has been interesting the way they've been able to at least adapt to a jungle change midway through their split.
And funnily enough, you know, ThunderTalk with Beishuan and without Beishuan have actually looked very similar. And if we take a look at specifically what the second round robin has looked like for our Group Ascend teams, it's actually a lot closer than you might think for these 4 teams towards the bottom. And we already saw what happened when FPX played against Ninjas in Pajamas, right? It was a super close series, barely going FPX's way. If we take a look at just how these teams have played in that second half, again, Weibo have really been struggling. They've been experimenting with support sub-ins, their coaching changes here and there. And so they've been 2-7 over their last 9 games. ThunderTalk have been 2-7 over their last 9. And the fact that ThunderTalk beat Weibo might make us think that these standings could be a little bit misleading if you just look at the total win-loss record for the entirety of the regular season.
Yeah, when it comes to that win-loss, ThunderTalk, they've been nothing if not consistent with how many matches they've been winning. But to be fair to them, the last 2 matchups that they're able to pick up was their very final one in Group Ascend, which was versus NIP. They were able to pick that one up pretty cleanly. It was a 2-0. And then they also managed to beat out Weibo on that 2-1 matchup back in the end of Week 6, I think it was, for their matchup early Week 7. So they were able to best them, you know? Yes, ThunderTalk overall looked like the worst squad, but it's nowhere near as big a gap as the overall standing 7-11, 4-14 would really lead you to believe.
Yeah, so we are expecting this to be a close one between Weibo and ThunderTalk to determine the final spot in the LPL Split 2 postseason. But before we dive more into this series, we did have a fun thought experiment put together by one of our casters in Rafa. You can find this on his social media page if you want to play along, but Bloxer, we're going to build a roster real quick. I'm going to get mine. You're going to give yours. $15 to spend. We have our top tier players at the top, our bottom tier players for just $1 at the bottom. And I think what I want to do here is highly value those carry players. So I'm going Knight for $5 and Pace for $4. And then I'm going Jue for $3 at my support position. And that leaves me with just $3 left. I got Solo Kill for $1. Monkey with $2. And he had himself a pretty good playoff series against LGD.
I like that. We've gone for very different ideas throughout this one. I've gone for the Shy for 3, Tarzan for 5, Knight for 5, and then 1xN and Wink as £1 players each for them. As much as I do think that the bot lane's incredibly important, I actually really enjoyed watching 1xN and Wink so far throughout the splits. Obviously, we didn't get to see quite so much out of Wink as one of those Group Nirvana teams, but 1xN specifically here on ThunderTalk today, I thought he looked great. He was also a very good part of them. As much as we were talking about, Jungle got poached, that was a good role for them too. I think 1xN was the other bit that you could really look at for ThunderTalk.
Yeah, it's always about finding the value, right, out of these picks, and you really couldn't go wrong with the ADs, and I think we both realized that, you know, mid lane, there is a very clear best player, and that was Knight, and so we both took him with that $5 pick. Check out Rafa's socials at RafaCast if you want to play along. Let us know in the Twitch chat in your in the LPL Discord as well if you have a roster that you want to share that you think is the best with that $15 valuation, of course. But let's dive right back in to this best of 5 between Weibo Gaming and ThunderTalk, and let's go a little bit further into that last matchup that they played, because it was only a couple of weeks ago. It is with the same iterations of the rosters that we'll be seeing here today. And ThunderTalk ended up winning, which at the time was considered a relatively sizable upset.
Yeah, everybody was looking at ThunderTalk and being like, right, are they going to manage to win themselves even another series throughout the entire remaining schedule that they've got for themselves? The answer was yes. Like we said, they pick up the win versus Weibo and versus NIP, and it wasn't even particularly close, right? ThunderTalk, they win the first game incredibly convincingly. They win the third game incredibly convincingly. Yeah, Weibo are able to pick themselves up that second game in between, but at least once ThunderTalk got rolling, as soon as they were able to get themselves into a position where they could start winning on the map, they never looked back. They weren't throwing away those early leads for themselves, and that's surprising in 2 ways, right? We've seen ThunderTalk on the few occasions where they have been able to pick themselves up a lead, throw it away for themselves, but even more than that, they've barely been able to get themselves leads in the first place.
Yeah, and so it was a little surprising to see ThunderTalk get that win, but again, when you take a look at that second round robin standings, these two teams, because of that series, end up standing dead even at 2-7, meaning that they have not looked that great over the last couple of weeks, which means you want to see a little bit more from them going into today. Let's get into the roster, starting off with Weibo Gaming, and when you take a look at the players that are on this team, Bloxer, the names really do stand out, but it just has not been met with the same results that we're expecting. Important to note that Erha is stepping back in to the support position with Hung, who played the last 2 series of the regular season, being subbed out.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't particularly good when we had Hung in. Despite the fact that they were winning a couple more series, I think Erha was overall looking a little bit better, but there's so much variance with him as a player. You can see the sorts of picks that he likes much more about going for a little bit more towards the enchanters, a little bit more supportive. At the same time, though, I get why they've pulled this swap through. I think maybe this is the slightly better look for Weibo overall, but it didn't feel like they had any particularly brilliant options here.
And I understand why Weibo initially went for the swap back to Hong after, Weibo were on a pretty sizable slide. But you can see here, even in the series that they 2-0'd against FPX, there were some really questionable plays that we saw from Hong, and I think overall did not have a good showing, as Weibo did go 1-1 in their last 2 series overall with him joining the roster once again. And so they've gone back with Erha. I want to re-emphasize something that we saw on that champion pool graphic, which is that Erha provides a little bit more flexibility. He's willing to play some of these enchanters. Things like the Lucian Nami are a little bit more in his wheelhouse if he wants to synergize that up with Light. And specifically, the Renata has been a big pick for him, as we're going to see a couple of clips from him on that pick specifically here. And I think that does give Weibo a little bit more options. And if neither of them is providing, that much in terms of like wins on the board for your team, you might as well go with someone who can play a couple more champions and maybe be better at a number of different picks.
Exactly. There was nothing particularly unique to Hung that made you want to go towards him as a player. And like you said, a couple of those iffy moments. So very much a understandable decision. But yeah, neither of these two have really been a mainstay carry for Weibo. When they're popping off, it's through the other lanes, or it's because you're finding something a little bit crazy that you could particularly play through Light. It's not necessarily the supports that are getting them into really strong spots. Because when we're looking at Weibo overall, when you're looking at the names on Weibo, they should be the stronger squad overall. On their best day, if Weibo's able to show up fully, this should be the better squad. The thing is, they just haven't found that consistency.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even talked about Breathe, Tien, Xiaohu. Like, we'll get into that a little bit later. But let's talk about their opponents in ThunderTalk. Looking to pull off the first seeding upset of the play-in stage. You see their name up top is in red. That is because they will be on the red side for game number 1. Hoya, Xiaohong Gren, Setab, 1xN, and Feather. Again, Beishuan was on this team for the first split and also for the first half of split 2. But now Xiaohong Gren has kind of stepped into that role after Beishuan went over to BLG.
Yeah, and like we said, right, Betron was a good part of this ThunderTalk roster. Good enough for the BLG wanted to pick him up, but it wasn't exactly that once he left, it was a much worse look out of ThunderTalk. They have been pretty consistent in terms of their wins and losses. When it comes to ThunderTalk, they've got a couple different people they can really play around. I think 1xN has been the best part of this roster for them throughout the entirety of this year, but Setab has been pretty interesting as a player as well. He's had some really high highs. This is a great little highlight reel of some of his best solo kills, some of his best team fights that he had across the year. At the same time, though, he's had a lot of performances where he just hasn't really shown up for the team in any way.
Setab's been a really interesting part of this team, and I think ThunderTalk overall, just the fact that they have had such high highs and low lows. I mean, remember, in the start of the year, in split number 1, they 3-0'd their group, including a 3-0 over BLG, making it into top 8, which got them here into Group Ascend after a nice play-in stage as well. But they have not had those same looks, especially after Beishuan left the team. Now, Xiaohong Ren has played a little bit better. I think as of late, he's learning how to coordinate a little bit more with Setab and with the team as a whole. But it hasn't been the same level as we were seeing at the start of the year. However, now we're in best of 5s, and that did seem to be a point where ThunderTalk did shine, at least back in Split 1, where they had that magic run going for themselves.
Exactly. They were able to pick themselves up all of those best of 5 victories, top their group, send BLG down into the losers bracket, and then still picked themselves up a game versus BLG in the playoffs. So best of 5s, very much where ThunderTalk seem to shine. They've got deep champion pools across the board. All of these players can play a lot of different styles, and it makes them very flexible when we get into the back end of these best of 5 series, where there's a lot of champions taken off the board. There's a lot of champions you can't rely on having anymore for yourselves. It would be a little bit wrong to say that they're a great best of team, because obviously the best of threes haven't looked so good. But hey, maybe it's that game 4, game 5 where they're really going to pop off.
Now, we have just a couple minutes left until those walkouts do commence, so let's start diving into the nitty-gritty of this best-of-5 series and talk about what each team needs to do in order to come out on top and lock themselves a spot in the LPL playoffs that are starting up in a couple of days. Let's start off with Weibo Gaming and their keys to success. I think for me, Bloxer, it starts in the top side of the map. Breathe has found a lot of success on side laners, things like the Jax and the Gwen. When Weibo have been putting him on tank duty, that has not been the best solution.
Save my man from the tanks, you know? Sion was something we were talking about specifically, where it's an incredibly strong champion in the meta at the moment, but you really don't need to be jailing him onto these tanky champions. He looks so good when he can have that little bit of extra skill expression for him. Bot lane as well, I think it's very easy to talk about, right? Because 1xN is so good. If you can shut him down, if you can even just get yourself a slight advantage in that lane, not allow 1xN to start snowballing through this lane, that's a great way to be able to find yourself success in that game and stop a lot of what it is that ThunderTalk want to do.
Yeah, if they can figure out what is going right for their bot lane, that's going to be good. Hopefully, Era in here is going to help them out a fair amount. Now, let's get into the ThunderTalk keys for the game as well. You know, first we got to give Zhao Hongren some agency here, making sure that he's doing good stuff in the early game, you know, making sure that he can find early leads for some of his laners. I think the biggest thing here for me, Bloxer, is we want to make sure that 1xN is in a position to carry.
Yeah, we have to see this guy be given the tools to success, you know? He's so good on these very aggressive pickups, things like the Kai'Sa, the Kalista, those specifically are what I'm looking at as the sort of champions that you can give to him, and hey, he can really carry you through. And one of the best things about ThunderTalk as an overall squad is their commitment to fights, you know? The second that somebody finds what they think is a good engage, every single member of ThunderTalk comes flying out of the woodwork, immediately engages onto these fights, and they can find these creative setups, like you said. Recently, they've been struggling a little bit more with that. They were especially good at that back during the lane swap meta, when everything was a little bit more up in the air, when people were in different lanes all the time. So with this new map patch being a little bit more standard, it might be a bit harder for them to do it. But I think, again, in a straight up, everybody's playing at their absolute best normal League of Legends game, Weibo should be the favorites here. So for ThunderTalk, they need to be creative. They need to find their ways into these fights that are a little bit different.
Definitely. You know, ThunderTalk have to recognize, individually, they're outclassed a little bit just on paper when you think of the legacy, the international performance and history of some of these players on their opposing side in Weibo. And so they're going to have to find creative ways to, you know, make plays for themselves, create situations where they do have the advantage, whether it's just in numbers or in counter matchups or just finding the right lane assignments for all of their players. That is going to be incredibly key for them if they want to take down Weibo. Again, the standings might make it look like Weibo's the favorites. The players on the rosters might make you seem like Weibo are the favorites, but in terms of the recent performance, the head-to-head, things are very dead even, Bloxer, and that's why we are potentially looking at one of the closer matchups on paper here in the play-in stage, and it's our last one. Just one more best of 5 until we know all 8 teams that are going into the playoffs.
And getting yourself into that playoffs, I think for ThunderTalk specifically, would be a massive boost. Making playoffs 2 splits in a row for a squad coming into 2025 that, you know, was looking like one of the bottom tier rosters. That would be massive for these guys. I think they could be very happy with that, whatever would happen to them in the playoffs. For Weibo, not making playoffs right here, getting knocked out, having to play in Group Nirvana next split would be a massive disappointment. So everything resting here on this matchup.
Well, let's get to it. We're in the draft for game number 1, a best of 5 between Weibo Gaming and ThunderTalk to determine who makes it into that playoff bracket. Again, Weibo being the higher seed had side select for game number 1. They use it to lock in a Taliyah first pick, giving Xiaohu one of his most played and one of his best champions, I would say, all season long.
Yeah, the Taliyah is something that a lot of these LPL mid laners have been loving. It gives you so much flexibility, and it just absorbs pressure in the mid lane. You're perfectly allowed to pick it up as a B1. Nothing's going to put too much pressure on it. Now, I'm seeing an early hover of the Yorick. We'll see if ThunderTalk actually decide to go towards that one. Hoya has liked it, has been pretty good on it. It takes it away from Breathe. Instead, they're going to flex over towards the Pantheon. That's something with a lot of early power for Zhao Hongren. Something you can really try to play around early on, but it falls off really hard in the later stages of the game.
So that's one of our keys, though. Remember, we wanted Zhao Hongren to have the ability to make plays in the early game, and you know, it's the start of things by picking a high agency jungler like this Pantheon. We see Hoya actually locking in the Yorick, and that means that, you know, he's gonna have that side lane threat that we wanted Breathe to maybe possess. And so now it'll be interesting to see what Weibo want to do here in this next set of picks. If they want to set up a tank matchup like that Sion that they were hovering for Breathe, or if they want to try to match side laner for side laner, as we see the Xin Zhao also getting locked in.
Oh, this is the exact opposite of what we were asking for right here. Breathe is going to be given that tank duty. To be fair, the Sion, as much as we called it out as something specifically we didn't necessarily want to Breathe on, it's a great champion in the meta at the moment, and it works really well alongside these slightly squishier, slightly more damage-orientated champions like the Taliyah and the Xin Zhao. It just gives you so much frontline. You can scale really well into the late stages of the game as well, and you don't have a bad matchup into the Yorick. If you leave the Yorick alone, sure, he could start rolling through these towers. Same thing, though, for the Sion. Both of these can be big side lane threats.
Yeah, it's going to be matched by the Ahri for Setab, as that is another champion that he has played a lot of this split. I think overall, when you look at our mid lane matchup in particular, Xiaohu prefers some of the more control mage picks. You know, things like that Taliyah, Orianna, also a big one here. Setab wants to go more towards that assassin route, and Ahri is kind of a hybrid between the two, but is going to be able to match up really nicely with the Pantheon. You can combine that charm alongside the W when the Panth jumps into the mid lane, and should be an easy target here in the immobile Taliyah as we head into the second phase of bans.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to see the Lucian and the Misfortune taken off of the board right here. Both of these champions could work really well into, I think, either of these compositions, to be honest. The Misfortune, especially alongside ThunderTalk, it just gives you that straight-up 5v5 teamfight potential if you do want to bring Hoya down, or you can find those 4v5 matchups when you've got that Yorick pushing on through the side lanes. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more bot lane orientated bans. The Renata, again, something we talked about that was particularly good on Urha, taken off of the board. I do wonder if we're going to see something like the Seraphine taken away as well. That could also work for this similar sort of play.
Yeah, we're waiting for the bot lane selections, as you said. That's why we're seeing a lot of focus towards those 80 carries. 1xN, one of the bigger carries here for ThunderTalk, and we highlighted it in the pre-show. If they want to win these games, you need to make sure that 1xN is in a good position to get them there. Feather has also been a really solid pairing alongside him as a support that can really help, you know, bridge that gap between just the bot lane 2v2 and the later team fights. So I expect to get him last pick here for TT, or just locking in that Alistar and actually saving that last pick for 1xN.
Xayah immediately going to be slammed, and yep, Lovers Duo is going to come through in the bottom lane. Xayah, Rakan. Xayah in a very good spot at the moment. The Rakan, the better part of that combo at the moment, though. Very, very strong support. Really works well alongside the Xin Zhao, gives you a lot of backline access. Now, what do you want as ThunderTalk? I think they need something that can play in the early stages of the game alongside the Pantheon, give you that extra level of aggression. I can understand why you'd want something a little bit safer as well. The Ezreal can work quite well by just sitting back in these early team fights, as well as the fact that you can unlock Feather to go roam around, pair up alongside Zhao Hongren and get into these other lanes. They are going to lock this one in, and so ThunderTalk, they've got themselves a composition that wants to play through the early stages, but it doesn't fall off too badly in the later game.
Yeah, especially if Hoya can stay at least even with Breathe, and most certainly Zhao Hongren and Setab are going to have to get ahead early on this Pantheon Ahri combo. That's going to really help ThunderTalk get into that late game where 1xN and Hoya can become bigger threats. As for Weibo, you know, eyes have to be on Xiaohu a little bit, as well as the bot lane here. As the Xayah Rakan, if they can get some, you know, good leads in the early game using that Lovers Duo combo, that would be very beneficial for them. As we're about to get into this best of 5, but before we do, let's see what some of our talent had to say about how this series could go as well. We've been running our predictions every day, and hey, Bloxer, that's you in a golden border. You've been perfect so far, and you're predicting a 3-1 for Weibo.
Hell yeah, perfect on both the teams and the match scores going forward. I don't know, I've just been feeling it so far. 3-1 for Weibo. I love ThunderTalk. I actually think it would be really fun for them to be able to make it through, but the quality of players on this last stand matchup where you have to win this one out, I just feel like Weibo, they've got that slightly higher ceiling. 3-1 is going to be the prediction, but I'm not that confident in it, I gotta say.
Yeah, and shout out to Shamrock and GX June Lover, who are our top performing Discord predictors so far.
Yeah.
If you want to join the Discord, join our predictions for the remainder of playoffs, you can do so by using the link in our Twitch chat and also down here in our description. And get in on some of the fun here, as we are going to have some fun here in this best of 5 as well. I predicted ThunderTalk. I've been wrong a lot of the time, though, so we got to take that caveat as one final spot in playoffs remain. It's either going to be Weibo, the favorites who have fallen short, or ThunderTalk, who have been some of those Cinderella stories here in split number 1, are looking to reclaim some of that magic here in split number 2. Let's do it for our last series of the play-in stage.
Let's go. Super hype matchup right here. Like I said, do or die at this point. What can you do to get yourself into those playoffs? You've done the hard part, right, of getting yourself into Group Ascend, so you get this matchup guaranteed. But now, what can you do to be able to get yourself all the way into those playoffs fully? You get Group Ascend next time as well. So much riding on this one, and some very interesting compositions to start with. Specifically, I'm looking towards these junglers. These are two very proactive junglers, and like we were mentioning, Zhao Hongren being on something that can play early, that can get his team a lead, that's exactly what you need right here.
I'm curious to see if the pathing kind of plays into that as well. Like, where is Zhao Hongren wanting to prioritize his early attention here on this Pantheon when he hit level 3? Such a strong ganker. However, we don't want to discredit Tian too much either, because him on the Xin Zhao definitely has the opportunity to do exactly the same. Weibo did collect a little bit of nice vision around Zhao Hongren's Raptor Pit, so he will be spotted upon clearing out this top side jungle. Then we'll see what happens and what intel that does actually leave Weibo in terms of, you know, being a little bit more careful, potentially on the bottom side of the map.
Early on, it's very much just going to be about what these junglers decide to do with their pathing. If they want to get aggressive potentially into the top or bot lane, I think those are both reasonable options for going for your early ganks. At the same time, though, once we get into the later stages of the game right here, these compositions are both incredibly map mobile. Especially Weibo Gaming, when you've got yourself both the Weaver's Wall and that Unstoppable Onslaught, you can get Breathe and Xiaohu into these team fights incredibly quickly. You've also got good map mobility because of that Grand Starfall from the Pantheon, and then Ahri, just a pretty mobile champion overall. But I do think ThunderTalk, they're going to potentially be a little bit later to these team fights if they want to pull any of these snap engages, whereas Weibo, they don't have to worry so much about getting that macro perfect, because they can make up for it through these very mobile champions.
So maybe a little bit more agency for ThunderTalk in terms of setting up around objectives first, for instance, and making sure that they're fully positioned in the right ways before a fight does actually break out. As we're seeing Seitab actually get the better of Xiaohu, at least in terms of damage in that early laning phase. Xiaohu does have a slight CS advantage, but that'll even out very, very quickly. As we are seeing our junglers complete their first clears, both towards the bottom side of the map, which we are considering to be quite a bit vulnerable and volatile on both sides, as Light and Erha gonna hit level 3 first and dash in and force that Arcane Shift away.
Yeah, as long as you could keep getting that Arcane Shift away from 1xN, this lane should be pretty easy to play out, at least in the early stages right here for Light and Erha. You see also Zhao Hongren going to be spotted out immediately. Like you said, he was spotted out on those Raptors, and so you can track him all the way down into the bottom side. This also means Tian going to be able to get on top of the Scuttle Crab a little bit quicker, and also has the fast track up through mid if he wants it as well.
Oh,
can just go for the double Scuttle. Currently, they're looking for bot lane a little bit. He's just going to bail out of that one, though. He's going to head topside, and it's going to be that double Scuttle. So, small advantage over to Tian. Nothing too much, nothing really to write home about. But these small advantages are important, because as we saw in their previous matchup... Oh, hang on.
Hold on. Might not even be double Scuttle. There might be a kill onto Seitab. He's forced to flash away. It's a nice seismic shove from Xiaohu. Will force Summoner Spell out of the ThunderTalk mid laner, and Tian can maybe even look for a further invade, as that second spawn of camps is coming up shortly, and Zhao Hongren has been spotted by that Scryer's Bloom.
Yeah, he's getting tracked throughout the entirety of the jungle at the moment, you know. Everybody is going to know exactly where he's at, and that makes it so hard to play out this Pantheon. Tian didn't quite get that last little auto attack off of his little jungle pet, I guess, so has to go back to grab the last hit onto that one. But this really does suck for Zhao Hongren, because this champion, the Pantheon, really needs these early ganks to be effective. If we talk about the Pantheon as being very much early game focused when he's individually in top lane, when jungle it's even more so. You can really fall off in the later stages. Setup should be fine. He's got Feather in the area, so that one's going to fizzle out. And this is another moment where ThunderTalk, they're trying to be proactive across the map right now, but Weibo, they're just tracking their opposition. They're doing really well at making sure they know where everybody from ThunderTalk is.
And specifically Light and Erha, so far showing a little bit more than maybe what they were doing, which led to Erha being, benched for the last 2 best-of-3s of the season, right? I mean, so they've gotten a good lead over 1xN and Feather, and they contributed to allowing that double crab to come through for TN and getting their jungler an early advantage by getting pushed in that bottom lane early. So good stuff so far from Light and Erha. Need to continue to see them perform if we want to see Weibo have some success, especially if they can shut out somebody as mighty and as powerful as 1xN in these team fights.
1xN is going to have to be a big part of their victories. Top side, actually, I'm going to see Hoya tick 6 first to
he
breathe.
is 6 first, forcing that flash himself. I was wondering if Hoya wanted to flash follow, but with just the Sheen in his inventory, might have been a little bit too risky to go for that killing blow. So we'll just be Hoya with getting that priority, heading back to base, getting a reset for himself. Actually, will be cancelled by Breathe as he hits level 6 of his own.
It's just going to be forced to stick around. I think for Hoya, flashing underneath the tower would most likely have resulted in his death, at least from that zombie form. Tian now potentially looking either to take away this Drake. Yeah, Zhao Hongren fully on vision right now. I don't know if he knows it.
Well, Satep has a wave priority, so he's going to actually go in. Stun initially does land onto Tien, and he has to use the Audacious Charge to get away. Grand Entrance does knock up 2, and there's a seismic shove come out of the Weaver's Wall. Xiaohu comes in first and allows for first blood to be collected by the side of Weibo Gaming. 1xN has to shift away. He's ticking very low, and the wind becomes lightning, comes through. Weibo are on the board. It's 2-0.
And that's what we were talking about, right? You're getting tracked all the way through the jungle for Zhao Hongren, but ThunderTalk, they think they've got the collapse. Tian stepped a little bit too far forwards. They are wrong about that one, unfortunately. Immediately, Weibo, they bring everybody on down, and that's what we were talking about, right? The Weaver's Wall from Zhao, who brings him down to that plate immediately, gets him there nice and quickly, and it's a brilliant seismic shove out of him to be able to just cut up the ThunderTalk members. Well landed on that last wind becomes lightning, like you said. It's a good attempt at that first initial pick, but there's not really enough follow-up. 1xN isn't there to deal enough damage right at the beginning, and it's a brilliant Weaver's Wall into Seismic Shove combo that you get out of Xiaohu that splits the fight up. Setup dashes over the wall and gets stunned as well. Ooh. And it was a good flash out of Erha to keep himself alive that you see on that one. 2 quick kills, and some quick kills onto exactly who you want to have that early gold, right? Tian and Light both get themselves that little bit of extra gold to kick their game off.
And it's that situation you were talking about, Bloxer, where the global presence of Weibo just a little bit stronger. Seitap was the first to move out of the mid lane on that play, but because Xiaohu has the Weaver's Wall, he was able to get there first and provide the highest impact out of either of those mid laners in that team fight, and that's what we need to see out of Xiaohu, somebody who has had some ups and downs this split specifically.
Yeah.
Our normal King of Spring has not necessarily lived up to those expectations here in 2025, but if he can deliver in the playoffs, that's what matters most, and that's what he's been able to do with Weibo in the past.
Exactly. Nobody was going to remember what you ended up doing for yourselves during the regular season. If you can get into the playoffs, a deep run especially would be great for Weibo that's in a little bit of a rebuild type split, not necessarily looking to compete for the title at this point, but hey, you never know. That playoff buff can be massive for some of these teams. Weibo going to pick themselves up all 3 of the grubs right here, and that's huge. You really want grubs onto your Yorick composition, but also picking them up onto a composition with a Scion, with a Talia. These champions can split push very effectively as well. It's taking things away from ThunderTalk. It's giving them the extra bit of an advantage right now. Weibo, at least for the first 9 minutes of this game, have looked incredibly good.
And now it looks like ThunderTalk want to try to make a play to bounce back a little bit here as Zhao Hongren does go forward with that Grand Starfall. Going to be combined with the Headbutt Pull, and there's no combination there for Xiaohu this time. Feather going to be the one to claim the kill, but it's ThunderTalk getting on the board.
And with only Xiaohu in the area, just wasn't going to be able to keep himself alive. Didn't have the flash up from that previous play as well. As much as we were just praising what Weibo had been doing, ThunderTalk, they do have the kind of composition that can just call those snap engages. And even through that ulti, just gets taken down right there. Well played out of ThunderTalk. They need to keep doing that. You need to be using that ulti basically off cooldown as Zhao Hongren to get yourself as far ahead as possible. And actually, that Drake wasn't taken off the back of that initial fight won by Weibo. So ThunderTalk going to be able to pick themselves up this one. A single Infernal Drake is pretty nice to be able to grab.
It's a nice way to even things out and stem the bleeding a little bit, right, for ThunderTalk, because they were dropping objectives, they were dropping kills left and right, and it looked like Weibo might have been able to really start to snowball here, but a nice response by Zhao Hongren specifically on the Pantheon, finding that kill onto Tien, putting a little bit more pressure back onto Weibo Gaming. Remember, just the expectations that this team had going into the year. I mean, this was a team that made it to Worlds last year, has made it to Worlds Finals in years past, albeit with a very different iteration of their team. But I think overall you were expecting a lot out of them so far, going into this season as being a team that could make it to internationals, and I'm sure they hear the noise as well that they have not been performing up to their expectations.
This is a team that's 5-1 out of their group during the placements, right? They are tied in series with BLG. BLG obviously have had a much better time of it during this split, whereas Weibo, as much as they started strong, just been faltering. A lot of other teams have been getting better and better. Not the case for Weibo right now. They very much need to just dismantle ThunderTalk if we want to be looking at them as one of the stronger teams. Currently, they're looking for a play onto Hoya, but Hoya just summons Maiden and is more than happy to play into this one.
So summed up a 4 versus 3 on the top side. Looks like those resources allocated are enough for ThunderTalk to dissuade that dive that could have been imminent here by Weibo Gaming. They're going to cancel some backs as well. We did, of course, already see the Grubs go over to Weibo, so not much to play for on the top side of the map. And we're really just trying to set up situations where either side is feeling, one way or the other about how their lanes are being set up. And right now, I feel like ThunderTalk are pretty happy with how things are situated. As long as Satab doesn't go down here, as Breathe is actually dishing out a lot of damage. Nice charm from Satab is actually going to make sure that Breathe does not pick up that kill, and he'll head back to base and teleport in.
Yeah, if you get hit by that knock-up, you probably are going to be dead right there as Satab. He's going to be just fine in this situation, though. TP heading down towards the bottom lane, just going to go rejoin the rest of that play. Something I feel like we need to talk about, right, is what version of the Yorick are we going to be getting right here out of Hoya? Because we've seen some teamfight Yoriks, we've seen some split push Yoriks. I gotta be honest, I prefer the split push Yoriks, but sometimes you feel like you just have to go and join up with the rest of your team.
Yeah, it's such a interesting predicament that you get put in a lot of the time, where your value as the Yorick champion is definitely to be split pushing, right? Pick up a hull breaker, just knock away on those turrets. But when you're playing on a team like ThunderTalk, where all you want to do normally, and your recipe for success, is winning out on these 5v5s. Could have backed out a little bit differently. As we're seeing another usage of that Grand Starfall from Zhao Hongren, as we see the headbutt pull also land onto Light, who has to pop the Feather Storm, but Satab's going to flash forward, not find the charm, though, as the drag back will find 2. And now Tien is hunting for a little bit of a trade, as Weaver's
TP.
wall comes out from Zhao, who Feather, very low, should be going down. First kill in the fight for Weibo. Now Zhao Hongren has the flash over, going to be immediately matched by Breathe, and Weibo are going to try to chase him down in a 3v1 situation. No more summoner spells available for Zhao Hongren. Zhao, who flashes in, gonna try to find that seismic shove, combined with the decimating smash, means that it's another 2 kills for Weibo Gaming.
And that's off the back of a very aggressive play out of ThunderTalk. It was a little bit mismatched, though. Zhao Hongren goes in, and then Satab goes in, and you're just not quite able to get the charm off onto any of those key members. Light has to blow the flash, the cleanse, and the ulti to be able to survive, but he does, and it baits the members of ThunderTalk in just a little bit too far. I'm sure we'll get a replay back at this one. This is what we were talking about from the Weibo composition, right? Those snap re-engages, the amount of map mobility that you have is huge, using the teleport from behind from Breathe, and then the Weaver's Wall from Vret Zhao, who in front just corrals the members of ThunderTalk into a horrible situation where there's no route out.
And if we do get a replay, what I want to check to see is if Light had to use the cleanse to get away from the charm of Satab, or if that ability just didn't end up connecting, because it seemed like it was a situation where he should have been synced up very nicely for that opportunity as soon as the Feather Storm came down. But there was no 100 to 0 of Light, and that was very important in order for Weibo to end up winning out on that exchange and now finding themselves up about 2,000 gold.
And it's now going to be 2 kills onto Tien. Kill and 3 assists onto Zhao, who been incredibly proactive. 100% kill participation for the mid laner at this point, and your jungler. And that's what you really want, that mid-jungle synergy really coming through at the moment for Weibo. They're up by about 2,000 gold as well. This early game very much gone in their favor. Only thing they haven't been able to grab is that initial dragon. They can rectify that with picking themselves up an Ocean Drake in 15 seconds time if they want it.
ThunderTalk going to want to be around that position, knowing that they've already picked up that first dragon. Could at least help stall out the game, as with 1xN starting to scale, continuing to try to find more advantages, and with Hoya, also a champion that can perform in the late game. Try to stall this one out for ThunderTalk could be big, which is why they want to make sure that they have that early dragon lead despite the gold lead going over. But Weibo
Tian
jumps over the wall. Tian not able to get the smite though, as Zhao Hongren will collect the second Drake of the game. Now Era goes forward with the quickness, but he's immediately headbutted away. Feather with a 3-man pulverize, and there's the true shot barrage here from 1XN. Almost takes down Era. He's forced to shift over the wall. Now Zhao's in some trouble as Satab's looking to chase him down. So far, no kills going over, but here comes Zhao Hongren. That is going to be the grand starfall over to lockdown Tian. Already Zhao has gone down. ThunderTalk finding the fight right back, getting the dragon and 2 more kills.
There we go, ThunderTalk. That's the kind of snap engages that we were talking about. Weibo, they just decide to fight this one with no priority, no positioning around that Drake pit. The second that you jump in as Tian and don't manage to get the smite steal, you've got to back this fight off. Instead, Weibo, they commit to the fight, get split up, and ThunderTalk just run down the disparate members. Really unfortunate for Weibo that they make this decision, because all of that early gold that they were able to pull for themselves, they begin to lose a big chunk of that gold lead. In fact, with that tower going down as well, the gold lead pretty much evaporates.
I mean, that's a huge swing right there. If Tian was able to pick this one up, would have been massive, but the Comet Spear combined with the Smite is just too much for Tian to handle. Yeah. And really nicely played by Feather in this fight.
Boom. Like I said, 3-man knock-up, sets this one up, and then you're so split, right? Light is all the way by himself up at the top side. You can see you've got Tian chasing around Zhao Hongren on the bottom side of the fight. And it's at this point where the Grand Starfall comes in, nice charm, nice knock-up, the combos, the lockdown CC coming through just beautifully. And you could just keep running down the members of Weibo at this point. You can see some ThunderTalk fans very happy with the way that that play works out.
And I think it's something that we've seen from Zhao Hongren more and more, especially as he's gotten more comfortable. He's fearless, man. He'll go in with these ultis. He's like 30% HP, hunting his way down here with that Grand Starfall, but it resulted in them picking up a couple more kills. And for ThunderTalk to now find themselves just 300 gold down and setting themselves up around this Rift Herald. If they pick this up, it'll be feats of strength in totality going over to them. And Weibo want to try to put a stop to it, but Feather's doing a really nice job boxing him out. A teleport comes in. It's going to be Breathe joining the fight. Right into the pit he goes. And Feather's bought so much time with the Unbreakable Will that the seismic shove has come in. Zhao Hongren has been caught out. He uses the agents trying to keep himself alive, but he will drop to Tian. And Breathe is going to flash from the wall, look to continue the assault. Unstoppable Onslaught comes through. There's the Weaver's Wall in from Zhao, but Feather cancels it and makes sure that he is the lone sacrifice in keeping his carries alive, at least for now. 1XN and Satab hunting under the tier 1 turret. They're looking to try to defend their lives. Satab doing a ton of damage with that Spirit Rush, and the charm does land onto Zhao, and the turret is heating up, but it's not nearly enough to take anybody down on Weibo Gaming. So despite the Rift Herald and the feats of strength going over ThunderTalk, Weibo pick up 3 kills, and it could be a 4th. Satab in some trouble. Tian dashes over the wall and will find his mark on the Nine-Tailed Fox.
And the key factor in this fight, the key difference between this one and the previous one, is the fact that Breathe joins the fight. So tanky at this point on the Scion. A ton of CC that you bring to the fight as well. You're just able to take down Zhao Hongren right at the very beginning of that fight and run through the rest of the Rift. And because we're so early on in the game, because Hoya wasn't able to get himself a big lead early on, with only that Trinity Force in inventory, he's able to take down the mid lane tower, but that's the only thing that you get back for this fight. He never comes and joins the fight. I think that's the right decision for him. But watch, if you just keep glancing back towards the minimap, watch how slowly it is Hoya just taking down that mid lane tower, not really participating in the fight. Whereas Breathe, he's involved, he's getting great use out of this Scion and just helps his team win this fight.
And maybe, you know, Weibo putting Breathe on these tanks makes a little bit more sense when you consider the way that they've been playing this game out. Breathe sacrificing some waves, sacrificing opportunities to defend towers, to go for these fights, and so far that has helped Weibo in this game. As now we're seeing Breathe, I think he used the ulti to try to clear out a wave, preventing this Herald from having as much value as it might originally have possessed. And it's going to be a trade of towers across the map. Satab, though, has found out Breathe. Don't know if the Ahri has enough damage to kill him, though, and so we'll see how annoying Satab wants to be, or if Breathe is just going to be able to get out for free.
Breathe does have a lot of armor at the moment, so it is possible that you can take him down as Satab, but it's going to take a while.
He's tickling that man right now. It's not even close.
You'll get him eventually, maybe. Yeah,
okay.
There you go.
He needed some help.
He needed the Ezreal to join.
And you know what? It will be a kill onto 1XN, which is desperately needed here. One of the bigger carries overall this season for ThunderTalk. When ThunderTalk win is because of 1XN, and he can slowly start to get himself into this one. You know, Light's been given some good gold off of turret plates, off of kills, off of assists. He's already at 2 items. 1xN has just picked up his second. That's a big spike for him, even though it will mean that they have to give up this dragon.
Yeah, Weibo just going to get towards this one much, much quicker. We'll have a quick replay of what it is that ended up happening. Yeah, he takes the ulti to try to get away, but Setup sniffs that one out and is able to go and help give that kill over to 1xN later on. ThunderTalk picked up the first couple of Drakes, but now you get that first Mountain Drake. If you can grab yourself a 4 Mountain Drake Mountain Soul right here for Weibo, Breathe would be unkillable. You know, there's absolutely nothing you can do at that point to keep yourself alive.
Oh, he's completely caught out. Its Era will jump in as well. 3 Talon Strike lands in, but Feather is here to peel away. Weaver's Wall coming through to try to block away Ari from the rest of his team. The Unbreakable will, not so unbreakable here. In a 1v4, it's Feather going down and Weibo getting right back on the board.
It's unfortunate for Feather to have to pay for the sins of his mid laner, and because you lose that support, it's going to be straight on down towards the Atakan for the members of Weibo. Xiaohongren is in the area, doesn't have the ulti available to him. It'll be real risky to try to steal that one away, so he just leaves this one alone. It is going to be the Atakan picked up for Weibo. As much as ThunderTalk are finding ways to fight back into this game, it just feels like the map play so much stronger at the moment for Weibo. But I like that we jump up to have a quick look at Hoya. This man's still only got 1 item completed. Once you've got a second one, this tower push is going to get a lot faster right here for Hoya. So the map play is going to get a lot harder. The macro is going to be a little bit trickier to try to play out for Weibo the later into this game we get.
Problem is here, Bloxer, that seems to be one of the lone ways that ThunderTalk can find advantages at this point, because Weibo, with this Scion on Breeze specifically, who has become very strong, even though, you know, technically Hoya does have more gold in that isolated 1v1 setting, the value that Breathe has brought to these team fights, combined with what Xiao and Light have been able to do, is just very, very powerful compared to what ThunderTalk have to offer at this point. So it's going to have to be Hoya playing through side lanes, and you know, that's not necessarily something that we've always seen ThunderTalk rely on, is having Hoya be the, you know, X factor in a game.
Yeah, it's very easy to get pulled in by the idea of the LPL Yorick, because you see people like 369 and Bin play it, and it looks great. It's so much fun to watch in their hands, but overall, the Yorick barely has a winning win rate right here in the LPL, because it's so tricky to get the macro working. If you do start really losing these 4v5s, or if your Yorick just isn't strong enough and has to come join up with these team fights, isn't able to maul through these towers with any map pressure on the side lanes, then this champion really just doesn't give you anywhere near as much as something a bit more standard like a Cassante or an Ornn can give you. Those were champions we were calling out for Hoya to potentially be playing. Really, we wanted this matchup to be flipped around. So far, though, Breathe has been having a very good time of it. Like I said, incredibly tanky at this point. Can just run down these squishy carries if he's given half a chance, and he's buying so much space and time for Light and Xiaohu to do the damage they need to.
Yeah, and you know, shout out to Xiaohu specifically, who has stepped up so far and hasn't found too many of those oopsie moments that we've seen from him, especially in the second round robin. And you know, he's somebody who has clutched up in the playoffs historically throughout his career. With a lot of international pedigree, a lot of domestic success in his back pocket as well. Actually, interesting to see him go for the Bloodletter's Curse as an item that was just buffed here on 2510 on the Taliyah. So trying to shred some magic resist here, get himself a little bit more strong. As now Weibo are looking for a play onto Hoya in a 2v1 setting. They land the slow onto him as well. I think Hoya is not going to be in a great position, but Xiaohongren has arrived, and it looks like they do want to fight this out for ThunderTalk, and it forces Breathe to use that unstoppable onslaught defensively.
Yeah, you don't really want to be using that as a defensive tool. That's now 2 of those ultis in a row used to get away from people. ThunderTalk, they keep the pressure up. You can see Xiaohongren perfectly happy to keep stepping up in this situation. Now, Erha is waiting in the wings, as is Feather. These supports very much looking to potentially find a fight right now. We've got a minute until the next Drake is spawning, a minute until we're going to have the Baron on the map as well. Uh-oh.
Oh, found out Light, forcing that cleanse. That's a big cooldown with this dragon spawning in less than a minute's time. And ThunderTalk now have mid lane prio with 1xN being able to sit there and shove this wave in. It could be the tier 2 just fully going down, and it will likely be. Will it come at the cost of board, though, as a teleport has come in from Breed? This Scion is a very beefy boy, and in comes Xiao with the Weaver's Wall. 1xN forces shift away. Satab running the wrong direction, away from the rest of his team, and that means that it's right now ThunderTalk sequestered and separated, and in a 4v5 situation. Feather going to be the sacrifice once more, as the ThunderTalk support will fall for the 3rd time this game, as Weibo get another kill right before the dragon.
Yeah, teleport to topside for Hoya to just try to push through this lane while everybody else is down towards the bottom side of the map. I was slightly worried in that fight that Zhao Hu had used the Weaver's Wall as anti-synergy, keeping his team away from the potential kills. They were all ended up on the side of Setab on the map, a champion very tricky to chase, was able to just keep dashing away, but they're still able to turn that one around, pick themselves up their kill onto Feather, and like you said, without the support, there's no real hope to be able to fight onto this one. A second Mountain Drake is going to be picked up here for Weibo, and this extra armor stacking, this extra resist that you're going to be getting right here for Weibo is huge. Yeah, a little bit close right there. Tian doesn't even end up smiting that one away. You still managed to pick it up for light, so it's not too worrisome, but yeah. I hope he's feeling good with his smite button when we come to this Baron fight.
I held my breath for a second. I won't lie. I saw the True Shot Barrage come. It's like, oh no, don't do this yet, Tien. We have a lot more League of Legends to play.
Do not get this one stolen away, because all of a sudden, giving ThunderTalk Soul Point, potentially, that's a massive turnaround.
Yeah.
You've done the hard bit, right? The hard bit was getting yourself that team fight, picking up the kill onto Feather. But this would be a very Weibo way to throw away a game. They have very much been the sort of team that can find themselves a couple of bits of individual success, but the overall map play hasn't necessarily been so strong. That hasn't really been the case in this game so far. I've been pretty impressed with them, and ThunderTalk haven't potentially shown us ways that they can get back into games, especially with the composition that they have, right? Pantheon only going to get weaker at this point in the game.
And he's already behind in gold to Tien as well. As the one champion that has scaled for ThunderTalk is Hoya, who is dishing out a ton of damage on this Yorick pick, forcing Breeze to flash away and send a lot of reinforcements up to the top side of the map. It will be Zhao Hu with the Weaver's Wall, trying to cut off Hoya and find a trade, and it will be flash for flash, all things considered on the top side.
Getting rid of that flash from Hoya, pushing him away from this top side of the map is going to be especially important considering we've got the Baron on the map at the moment. And the pushing lanes are just coming through right now for ThunderTalk. You can see they had a pushing lane in the top side. They've got a good push going on in the bot lane right now through Setab. It's just giving them so much pressure across the entirety of the map. Right now, ThunderTalk, they're very much going to be in control of this Baron pit if they want it. At the same time, though, it feels like Weibo, they are biding their time and looking for that perfect engage that they can find. They might have to wait a little while until we have that Weaver's Wall back up in about 40 seconds' time.
Oh, Feather might have been caught out once again, gets knocked up, forced to pop that Unbreakable Will, and now ThunderTalk know that they have to go in. They go in for Tian, who pops the Crescent Guard just in the nick of time, but Setab comes in with a Spirit Rush into that zone and will take him down. Xiao Angren just jumps in straight to his doom. That is going to be light to get the kill on the Setab on the back end of things, making it a 2-for-1 overall so far. Breathe dashing in with that unstoppable onslaught and forcing 1xN to shift away. Weibo Gaming